You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Monte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It would be very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. No matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And the sight of 2-1 to the home team will be familiar to most of us after this week, after a 2-1 victory last weekend to a 2-1 midweek victory, and then a 2-1 away defeat to Newcastle. And all I can say about that is we led in every category except for the one that actually matters. And it was much better than any recent performance we've put in up at St. James's Park. My only hope is that the away fans could actually see it. There's no guarantee there. But continuing with the things that are familiar, Danny Ings scoring goals. That's something that is becoming more and more familiar to us as the season goes on. And, you know, a lack of back post defending. That's pretty familiar to Saints. Dodgy goalkeeping decisions, also pretty familiar to Saints. Watching former players go and win things and do a really good job, and then wishing we had them back. That's pretty familiar to all of us as we go on. So that is what's happening in the world of Saints as we speak. And although we were out of the relegation zone for a few days, we're right back in it now. And of course, 2 victories were never going to alleviate any of that worry, but we are with the pack. We are within striking distance. We can pull other people back to us. And that's really all we can hope for, that and that somebody else will get beat 9-0 so we can stop talking about it as soon as possible. So this week, I'm joined by Arron Sanders. Arron is the media editor at saintsworld.co.uk. You can get in touch with him on Twitter at ARRON SANDERS, or you can get in touch with Saints World directly at Saints World FC on Twitter. They're also available on other social media channels, and the links are in the show notes. But Arron has never been on the show before. This was the first time. A big thanks to Arron for being patient with me as I figured myself out, and then coming on the show and being willing to talk about working for saintsworld.co.uk, and then also just being a fan and breaking down the game. So that's what we'll do. We'll talk a little bit about Norwich, a little bit about Newcastle. We'll take your questions and more, but that's enough from me. Let's get to the show. Get to Arron. We'll talk to you on the other side. I'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Arron Sanders. You can find him on Twitter at Arron Sanders. He is the media editor at saintsworld.co.uk. Arron, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the show.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. I probably should have asked you to make sure that it is how I pronounce your name before I did that, but am I right?
Yeah, you are correct. No issues there.
I have a little bit of a confession. I have a spreadsheet with everybody's name on it as they're coming up, and as I was looking for yours, I accidentally erased the cell that had where to contact you on it, and so I was looking through places, and I was spelling your name wrong. I could not find you, and was starting to stress out on Tuesday, and then finally found it in my email, but it was from Twitter. It was a mess, but I apologize for that. I probably didn't need to tell you that, but I'm going to anyway. So yeah. So if anybody's looking for you on Twitter, it's ARRON SANDERS. So sorry about that.
That's all right, man. You probably won't be surprised to know that's not the first time that would have happened to me. So you're all good, man. No worries at all.
All right, we can. I guess you can blame your parents. People call me Mark constantly. It's just what it is. So I think we're together on that one. But overall, I mean, I would say a terrible week. Obviously, we talked about the win last weekend on the last show, and but we have a midweek win to talk about, and then a disappointing loss, I guess, at Newcastle. But I guess the game went better than any of the previous ones we've had, in recent years anyway, up there.
Yeah, not a happy hunting ground for Saints, is it? At St James's Park, but we didn't perform too badly today. We just, I suppose the same old. We didn't take our chances, and we've always got a mistake or two in us at the back. So Newcastle are on a good run of form at the moment, and I suppose they took the chances that came their way. So, but on the whole, it's been a pretty positive week, I would say, compared to previous weeks gone by.
Absolutely. But we'll get to the games and we'll get to all that. Let's talk a little bit about you, because whenever there's somebody on the show for the first time, we try to get to know them just a little bit so people have an understanding of where you're kind of coming from. So most Southampton fans, or a lot of Southampton fans, it seems like, have some connection to Southampton. Are you a local? Are you born in the area? Or did you move to the area? Or how did you become a fan of the team?
Yeah, so I was born in Southampton. Princess Anne Hospital in Southampton, lived pretty much all my life in the New Forest area of Southampton. So local, stayed loyal to the local team, unlike some people, I guess. And I spent a lot of my childhood down at Staplewood when training sessions were open to the public, and sort of fell in love with the team, really.
Your family also, mom and dad, everybody support Saints, or was the house divided at all?
It's a divided family. Origins of my family are from London, sort of in the Woolwich area, sort of South London, but they're all Arsenal fans because Woolwich Arsenal is where the Arsenal team originated from. But as the family moved down here, the younger sort of generations more and more leant towards supporting Southampton. And I'm sort of continuing on that side, but there is a bit of a split.
All right. Well, I guess they were probably pretty happy with us then when they drew with us and then Emery got sacked. So I guess everybody's happy there. We get a point. They get a new manager, which I think most Arsenal fans wanted at that point.
Yeah, I think they were happy. I don't think we were too happy there. We had more than enough chances to win that game, but they got Emery sacked, so they were ecstatic about that. I think they want, and most of them I've spoken to seem to want Pochettino to take over, which would, we can get into that later if that comes up, but I'm a big admirer of Pochettino, so if he does go there, then that'll be great for them.
Yeah, we have a question that might make its way in there, so we'll see. You kind of mentioned going down to Staplewood and stuff as a kid, but do you have any particular moments that kind of stand out in your time kind of watching Saints, or is there a particular, maybe it's an era, maybe it's just a match or a goal or whatever it is, but do you have anything that stands out to you as like a particularly fond memory?
Probably just my first time going to the Dell as a kid. I was 5 years old when I went to my first live match at the Dell. It was actually against Newcastle, and we won that game. It tends to be the way when we play Newcastle, we win at home, lose away. But yeah, that was amazing. I actually saw Matt Letizia score a goal that day. So from then on, no surprise that he was my favourite Saints player growing up as a kid, like most Saints fans of that era, I guess. But it was definitely, I suppose, my first day going into the Dell and just being so close to the pitch, and literally you could lean over and touch the players if they were taking a throw in.
You didn't try that though, did you?
No, not at 5 years old. No.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's better than anything than the Man City fans gave some of those Manchester United players, I guess. Water bottles and abuse. Not what we want to see at games. But yeah, I mean, do you remember the move then to St. Mary's? And I mean, can you kind of describe the difference between like walking into the Dell for the first time and then walking into St. Mary's for the first time?
It's very, very different. St. Mary's was very modern. It didn't feel that special to me because if you've been to away games prior to the move, a lot of the grounds around that time was similar. Mm-hmm. Sunderland, especially if you've been to Sunderland, it was a slightly smaller version of the Stadium of Light is what it kind of felt like walking in for the first time, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
And I suppose, I think St Mary's has grown on me more years, but I've always sort of been a more bigger fan of the Dell than St Mary's, but St Mary's is home now. And it's always got those memories, I suppose, at St Mary's now makes it special as well.
Sure.
Special home games, Inter Milan in the European Cup, come back against Liverpool under Ronald Koeman. So many games that jump out at home, but just memories come flooding back when you walk through it these days.
I can say that St. Mary's and then, the London Stadium are the only stadiums I've ever walked into. So both of those feel special to me just because it was the first time that I had been to either St. Mary's, which is, obviously where the team I support plays. And so when I get to go there for the first time, it's a big deal. But then, the first time I saw him play was at the London Stadium. And so walking out of there was all kinds of, just the feeling of anticipation and stuff like that. And then we lost 3-0. But it's I understand those stadiums are not, maybe they don't have some of the charm as some of those other things. It's not like walking into Craven Cottage or some of these other places that you can think of. I think of Goodison Park as being somewhere that might be nice to go see. I don't think you're alone in remembering the Dell slightly more fondly than you do of St. Mary's, but like you said, it's home now, and we have some memories there as well. So hopefully we continue to make them, and they are positive. But at home has not been a happy hunting ground lately until kind of the last week. So hopefully we're starting to turn that around. But you also do some work with saintsworld.co.uk, the website that is run by Robbie for the most part, and then you are part of the team that helps do the editing and stuff like that. But I guess just describe your role and how that came about and what people can find if they go to the website.
Full of content. We sort of pride ourselves on being like a family-friendly website, free for anyone who wants to put their thoughts on anything Saints FC related down, and all they need to do is contact any one of us, whether it be Robbie or myself, and so just put their words down, and we'll make sure that it gets up on the website. We partnered up with TSP, another podcast. If people can go on our website and watch their episodes there. But it's all really sort of just try to connect. Have a place where all Saints fans can go and read family-friendly stuff, different opinions, different, on whether it's match reviews, previews, just thoughts on subjects of the day, anything like that really. Kind of got started. Robbie was looking to launch the site. I dropped him a message on Twitter saying, if you need any help or, you want someone to help contribute, then I'm more than happy to do anything to help. And kind of started by looking after the social media stuff, running sort of the Twitter accounts. We've also got a Facebook group, Instagram account as well. And so more stuff that gets edited. I started off as a writer before I even started with Saints World for different websites like The Ugly Inside, Read Southampton. So I kind of just wanted to build on that base that I already had going into it, really.
I mean, do you find it, I guess, we've talked about it with other people on the show before, but as, when the team is not doing well, sometimes some people find it harder to continue to do the work because it is hard work. Editing is not necessarily always a fun job. Even writing for me is something that is super difficult, and I force myself to do it because I want to get better at it. But sometimes when it's when the team is not doing well, it's not a terribly it is not terribly fulfilling, I guess. Sometimes, do you find that it's harder to get people to write and get people to do stuff and then do the actual work when the team is not performing, or do you think that it's since the website started, it's kind of just been we've kind of been terrible since then, so it's just kind of what it is?
It can be a bit of both. Some people will find it quite soothing to vent their frustrations by writing something down. I think it can be difficult for all of us, really, whether it's people contributing or if you're editing something, then you can't let your own personal feelings, if we're on a particular bad run of form, or if we've been under particular management and you're critical of a certain aspect of their management style, then try not to let your own personal views at that point in time affect the role that you're doing, and have hindrance on anyone who does decide to contribute. So I suppose we're all human. It can be difficult to block that out at times. But as I say, we all need to be fair to each other. But as I say, it's not always too difficult a job to do, because it's easier for some people to write it down.
Yeah.
So that's what we're here for, I suppose, at the end of the day, to give them that platform.
Sure. Sounds good. So if people want to visit saintsworld.co.uk, the link is in the show notes and people can go do that. And also the link to the social medias is also there, so people can get in touch if they want to write, or if they just want to read, or they want to do whatever it is, they can do that. So let's, I guess, move on towards the matches. And it's not very often we have two matches to talk about. And I want to be home and got to watch a good portion of the Norwich match. Unfortunately, a water pipe broke at some point and I had to go attend to that. But Redmond made his 350th club appearance, not for Saints, but just club appearances in English football, I guess, in general. But I guess for you, we'll start with the lineup. And was there you have any issue with the lineup that's being chosen? The fact that we've gone back to a back four now pretty consistently for the past three matches. It's stayed the same, including the goalkeeper, and the team has largely been unchanged. But you feel pretty confident with how things have been going since then?
Yeah, I do actually. I think it's something that we should have done maybe a bit sooner, but I understand, obviously, Ralph being hesitant to make a change, especially at the back when we've been so fragile and leaking so many goals. Unfortunately, in the early part of the season, he's probably not had that confidence to commit to the change, but it was good to see it happen. I think when you get beat 9-0 at Leicester, it kind of gets to the point, well, can't get any better, so let's try something else. And I think it's definitely improved the team.
I guess you hear like the term defending in numbers, and maybe some people apply that to just having more defenders, but I think actually this move to the back four and us kind of attempting to push higher up the pitch and kind of force the other team into mistakes, looking at the opposition that we've come up against the past three matches, it has worked pretty well. Maybe less well against Newcastle, but still I think pretty well overall. And the first half against Watford, we didn't look particularly great. We wound up getting the win. The first half against Norwich, I think, was better. We had a lot more of the ball early on, but not a ton of chances. But we got up inside 25 minutes from James Ward-Prowse set piece to Danny Ings. But I thought we were much better than Norwich in the first half, and probably could have been more than just 2-0 up by halftime. But I guess were you happy with kind of how the team came out? And I think that sometimes a night game at St. Mary's in the middle of the week, if you think about what we had in the past recently, it hasn't necessarily always been great. Bournemouth stands out as a night game. The Leicester City one, of course, stands out as another night game. But midweek, I think the weather was pretty bad, but we seemed to show up and at least put in a good 45 minutes early on, and I think that's something we can kind of be pretty happy with. But what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was definitely good to get a positive performance under the lights and win at home finally. I expected us to be better against Norwich than we were against Watford, just because of the type of game that Norwich play. I think suits our style better. especially where they do have a bit more of the ball. We do tend to do better under Ralph with teams who have the ball, and when we win it, we can quickly spring an attack. And I think the midfield to pivot of Højbjerg and Ward-Prowse have complemented each other quite well in the new system. Although I was surprised a little bit to begin with to see Romero dropped. But I think obviously he's seen in training how well those two can combat each other to sort of win the balls back and get those attacks going. And I think a team like Norwich was always going to present us with a better opportunity to play the way we want to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I know not everybody likes Romeo, but I think I like Romeo, and I think in this system though, you can't play with a true kind of holding midfielder. You have to have two guys who can kind of do everything. You have to have guys who can run up and down the pitch, who can break up play, who can make passes, and maybe we struggle with a guy who's really good at all of those things. But I think that Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg, at least in the last kind of we're looking at this run of games where we were going to play Watford and Norwich, and we needed to get 6 points from them. And whether or not we thought we were going to, we knew we needed it, and we managed to do it. And I think they were kind of a large part of that. And Ward-Prowse, if nothing else, for the set pieces and things like that. And then Højbjerg is out there kind of leading the team and kind of doing all of the things that are needed in the middle of the field. And I thought that they held themselves very well against a team that was playing with one extra man in midfield, and they didn't look like it. They didn't look like they were able to dictate play against us, which I thought was really good. And it speaks highly to the work rate of the guys in front of the midfield as well. Like that, we're also working really hard to close down passing angles and make close down passing lanes and make passing difficult, and therefore making the job of maybe the midfield too a little bit easier. But still, they were all working extremely hard, kind of up and down the entire game. So pretty good for them. But I guess we want to talk a little bit about Ward-Prowse and the set pieces and all that stuff, because it's always what gets brought up on every broadcast here as soon as there's a dead ball, that Ward-Prowse is over it and how good the delivery is. And I don't know, like he was on the money for those two again. And for the first goal, Ings just gets his head to it just a little bit, just enough to redirect it. And it's a goal, and we're up 1-0 and kind of off and running. And then Bertrand got a goal finally. But I think the big thing there was the ball came in and Long got up and was able to flick it on. And I don't know what the guy was doing at the back post. I think I have a screenshot in the notes here. The guy's kind of covering his face and not doing anything else, standing there at the back post, where he just defends the ball. Maybe we don't go up 2-0.
Yeah, I think Bertrand in general has been, since his suspension's come back and a lot better. Seems to have gone away and found himself a little bit almost, and he gets a lot of flack from fans about his attitude. Certainly before the suspension. But whatever it is, that's sort of got his head back in the game. It seems to have clicked all round. He seems to have upped his game, and it was good to see him, be in the right place at the right time from Long's flick on for the second goal. Prowse's dead ball ability is up there with the best in the league. I think that's why not just Ralph, but managers before that have tried so hard to find a place for him in the team, just so that he's on the pitch for all those situations. I think obviously he's recently, over the last season or so, had to show that he's got more in his locker and deserves to be on the pitch for more than just that. But he's certainly, if he's within striking distance or anywhere in around that penalty area where he can put a decent delivery in, we know that we've got a good chance of making something happen.
Yeah. I guess for me, I mean, we he seems to come up a lot on the show in terms of is he doing enough to justify the place? Is he, I guess, is the dead ball worthy of him being in the team? And are we sacrificing elsewhere where we could have a better player potentially, where somebody else who's maybe not quite as good, putting in set piece deliveries, could we get by with that? But I think a lot of our goals recently have come from set pieces. A lot of them have been James Ward-Prowse. At least he's been involved in the set piece kind of stuff, and other than that, it's been him scoring or Danny Ings scoring. And so I think it answers the questions about his performances and whether or not he should be in the team. I think if you look at the team, he's got to stay in until he, does something that is far below par. But I think right now, there's no way you could talk about taking him out of the lineup, because I think you'd be missing a little bit too much.
Yeah, definitely Danny. I'd love to think where we would be right now without Danny Ings and his goals, to be honest with you. But he's definitely been all that we wanted him to be when the move was made permanent. Definitely seems to have had a great pre-season behind him. We've not really had we've not really had any major injury issues with Danny Ings so far this season, and long may that continue, because if we can keep him fit all season, he can easily sort of get 15 goals this season, which could be the difference between us being a Premier League team next season and not.
Yeah, absolutely.
After Danny Ings, the next highest goal scorer for us is James Ward-Prowse, though. So I think until Nathan Redmond's not unfortunately doing what he did for us last season in terms of the amount of goals and assists that he was able to get that got him player of the season. And Prowse seems to be the one now that's almost stepping up to be that sort of assist and goals player for us. So until someone else can step up and start filling those attributes, I don't think we can afford to drop Prowse over, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Premier League goal scorers and just Premier League goals now, Vardy, top of the list. If he's not on your fantasy team, this is not a fantasy podcast, but you should get him in your team. Aubameyang, Rashford, and then Danny Ings and Sergio Aguero are tied with 9, or level at 9, with Harry Kane and Sadio Mane. So, like, if you look at the list of those players, I think the only real surprising one for me is Rashford. I would say also that Rashford takes the penalties, or tries. I guess they all share missing them at United for some reason. But I mean, you look at the list of people that he is, competing with, and a side that's not scoring very many goals. And if you look at our performances and just our season, it hasn't been a great run. And he hasn't had one game where he scored 3 or 4 goals and then gone, dormant or invisible for games. He's been in games and helping us a lot. And I think Ralph mentioned that he may have run more than some of the midfield players in midweek, and for him to be able to do that and then still contribute and score goals, I think he's doing fantastic. And anybody who's, I think, criticizing him and saying we paid too much or whatever, I don't think that's true at all. I think we are pretty fortunate that he wanted to come back, or he wanted to come down to Southampton, back home, I guess, and then he is been lucky enough, like you said, to remain relatively injury free, and we'll have to see how it kind of goes over the busy schedule. And I think our main job right now is to find him a partner that works. And if it's Long, then it's Long, and if it's Adams, then it's Adams. But whoever it is, that person has to kind of do the things that will help Danny Ings score more goals. And that's what we need from the team right now, because I think if you have a playmaker like that, if you have a guy who can score you goals, you got to kind of do what you can to support him and get him into positions to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a stat earlier that I saw that said, only 2 other players have scored in 5 successive Premier League appearances for Saints, and that's James Beattie and Matt Letizia. So, the fact that he's only the 3rd Saints player to score in 5 successive games just shows what a run he's on at the moment. And whoever it is, Ralph decides to pick alongside him, whether it seems to be Shane Long at the moment that's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if it's Long, it's Long. Shane Long does a lot of stuff off the ball that I'm quite a big admirer of. I know he can be a bit of a, Marmite type player for the fan base, but I'm a big fan of what Long does off the ball.
Yeah, he definitely divides opinion, but I think a lot of our players do. I think, you look at James Ward-Prowse, he does the same thing. Redmond does the same thing. I think the ones that don't, I'm trying to think right now, maybe Bednarak, I think. Maybe might be the only one. I think other than that, everybody has varying opinions on a lot of people. So I don't know. But I guess the good news about the Norwich game is we did, have a kind of a defensive lapse. And I guess one person maybe that doesn't divide opinion either is Cedric, because it seems like most people are anti-Cedric at this point after his comments in the newspaper, and his performances since then have not shown to be overwhelmingly great. He hasn't helped himself, I guess, all that much, but there's a lot of space in there for Pookie between Cedric and Stevens. He gets back to 2-1, and then I kind of felt like when we looked at the subs, if you go back and look at the subs from the Arsenal match and from the Watford match, they were very much going forward. We lost the Arsenal match kind of trying to get a third goal, which I said at the time I was okay with. I think I still am. You look at the Norwich game, obviously the Watford game, we're trying to get back into it, trying to get ahead and win the match, and we did. And then you look at this game where the subs, I think, fit the situation, where it was clear that maybe we were a little bit leggy or whatever, and the subs kind of came in just to kind of shore it up and decide to kind of shut up shop and get out of there with a win. And I think we did, even if it's not the fans' favorite thing to see, but I think it was warranted. But I was wondering, what from your perspective was that, were you have issues with that, or you have issues with the way the team tried to see out the game, or were you okay with the tactics that Ralph employed down the line there?
The tactics were fine. I think we're all always a bit edgy, especially when a team scores against us, as to whether we're then going to be able to hold on, just because I suppose those scars are still relatively fresh in our minds of tending to capitulate under the pressure. Fortunately, the last couple of games, Watford and Norwich, seem to have been a bit of a morale booster in terms of actually being able to hold on. The substitutions, I think Ralph got spot on in both those games, which contributed to getting the right result, which is good to see. It did, to me at least, go on a bit of a spell where he wasn't necessarily making the choices that I would have made for subs or the right times for those subs, but he seems to have maybe himself got a bit of confidence from the way that the team's been performing better, even from the Arsenal game. Really, the performance levels were much better. So I think not just the team, but Ralph himself have sort of got his mojo back, and that's contributed towards positive results.
I think there was definitely a time when he was making what we all seem to think were super odd decisions, and I think everything was kind of going wrong at that point. Performances weren't there. The substitutions seemed to be off. Everything seemed to be kind of going the wrong direction. But it seems like, at least since this break, since the most recent international break, things have been a lot better. And some of the real positives I think we can take from the Norwich game are, the chances we created were pretty good chances. We created a number of them, even with kind of less of the ball. The fact that we were able to move out of the relegation zone, given kind of what happened to Everton and things like that, I thought that was that was the first time in a while that we've been out of the relegation. I think the first time since September, and so just that in and of itself, just a couple of days of being able to lift ourselves and keep the rest of the pack close and within striking distance, I think was super important. It would have been very nice, of course, against Newcastle to continue that trend. And we're going to talk about it in just a second. We were so close to doing that. That is very frustrating, but it just wasn't, it just didn't quite do it, but we'll get to that in a second. But, I mean, I think there was a lot to take also from the performance of not just the first half, but even in the second half when we weren't maybe quite as good, when things didn't quite go our way, that we were still able to kind of hold out and get through it and get 3 points and move on towards Sunday. But we mentioned at the top of the show that the trip to Newcastle to St. James's Park is never an easy one. I think I want to say it was 3-0 defeats each of the last 2 seasons, maybe. I think it was I want to say this is the match that cost, or it was the last match that Pellegrino managed. I won't say it cost him his job. I think his job was gone a lot before then. But I want to say that we've had a pretty poor run of form up there, and a TSP host Ben Stanfield, of course, drove down for one of those at halftime when we were down 3-0. Went to the bar downstairs instead, and enjoyed the rest of his afternoon instead of watching Saints kind of put in a pretty pitiful performance. I still remember that story and will not forget it because that's what I should have done at West Ham, I think. But we saved the drinking for after, so there you go. But in terms of the lineup for today's match, the same team unchanged from midweek. The only difference being Vestergaard on the bench for Danzo. But any issue with that, given that the guys did a lot of running and a lot of pressing, and you're asking them to do it again, kind of in a short turnaround, or you think that Ralph just thinks these are the guys that can do the job, and I'm going to have them do it anyway, or do you think that it all cost us late in the game, maybe when we maybe just ran out of steam?
I don't think you can blame Ralph really for not wanting to change a winning formula. I think every manager searches for that, and if they've got something that's working, then why change? We've all got our own, opinions on should certain people be starting in general. I think you mentioned Cedric earlier on. Dan Battery not even on the bench, so he's obviously got a lot of faith in Cedric and sees something that some of us don't. But no, I don't really have too much of a problem with it because, like I say, I would expect that really. If you've got something that's not great, then why play with it?
Right, absolutely. All right. I thought both teams came out with quite a bit of energy in the first 5 minutes. A lot of Newcastle seemed to be pressing us a little bit, and that's always a bit nerve wracking to see your team kind of get pressed and you just kind of go, this is one mistake and they're in. But we seemed to handle it just fine. And it seemed like they were the more nervy of the two teams. If you kind of look at it, I thought the game was pretty lively, and I was pretty happy with how we started the match, especially given that we had just played a couple of days before. Of course, Newcastle had 1 day fewer rest, I think, than we did. But were you pretty happy with kind of the opening exchanges of the match and how the team kind of seemed to approach just the overall from the outset, I guess?
Yeah, I was actually. I thought we started pretty well. I was pretty impressed, considering the run of form that Newcastle had been on. The fact that we were able to sort of compete 50-50, if not maybe even slightly edge in the opening sort of passages of the game was good to see. At that point I was actually feeling quite optimistic about what we might be able to achieve from the game. So as the game went on, I think in the first half, Redmond's one-on-one chance was the best chance of the first half, which is a shame really that he wasn't able to convert that. I mean, I think that would have done the world good for his confidence right now. You can see he's not a confident player at all, which is a shame considering how well he was for us last year. I think the Redmond of last year would have stuck that one away for us. But I was very impressed with the first half, and to be honest with you, I was optimistic going into the break.
I mean, that, like you said, that opening chance for Redmond was, I think, by far the best chance we had, and it was was good of him to be aware of the situation and take the chance to go and press for the ball and try to intercept that. I thought maybe he took it a little bit early, like maybe he had another step or two, another touch or two to make the goalkeeper commit and just slide it by him, But I think, as you said, he's definitely not a confident player right now. And I think two matches ago he was told he was pulled off early, and Ralph mentioned that he just wasn't brave enough that game. And so I think since then he's really shown a little bit more, doing a lot more things off the ball. I think I want to say he had more tackles than everybody else, maybe other than Højbjerg, it was either Watford or Norwich. And so like stuff like that, I think it just shows he can do that stuff. He just sometimes has to be reminded that his spot is not, it's not guaranteed in the team. He's got to come out and kind of earn that. And at the same time, people, we want to see our wingers kind of creating and scoring those chances. And you think about guys like Buffal, you think he probably puts that away if he's in that same situation. And Djenepo, he might rifle it into the roof of the net or kick it into the stands, but he likely will put that away. But it's one of those things where you wish you would be able to just convert that and get off the mark and maybe get some confidence back, but he doesn't. But yeah, it is one of those things. I don't know. I can't really remember that many clear-cut chances other than that Redmond chance. Really, I think there were a couple of times that it was clear Newcastle were going to attack down our right, down Cedric's side, and they did that repeatedly. And he committed a number of fouls, I thought, that were maybe not necessary, but I think it just showed that he was a little bit concerned about the pace of Newcastle's attack down that side and his kind of unwillingness to be exposed in the way that he had been over recent matches. And so he was giving away free kicks that I thought could have been dangerous, but for the most part, I thought we survived them, but it's still not something I was super, super happy with. And if I'm trying to pick out a negative of that, I would say that was what it is. But I thought also we were really positive with the press. We really forced Newcastle into making a lot of mistakes and creating chances, and we just weren't able to convert them. And as a result, of course, it's another loss for us, unfortunately. But there you go. I don't know. Anything else in the first half really stand out to you as something that needs attention or something anybody should be praised for?
No, I think the main thing, I think I can agree on teams in general, really, not just Newcastle, seem to target Cedric's side of the pitch. So it's obviously not just, us in the stands that are noticing his performances of late. I think obviously teams are going into games against us with sort of a plan of, get the ball down that side and you'll have some joy against us. So, and Newcastle have a saint of their own who caused them no end of problems. Guy who was full of confidence got his first goal against Sheffield United, and I think they exposed that as much as they could, to be honest.
Yeah, he's lively, right? Like that kind of unpredictability, that pace. It reminds me of guys. You think of Adama Traore, who can run by you. It's just, can you do the rest of it? But St. Maximin seemed to have a couple of times, I think, in the second half, be able to just dribble through a couple of guys too, be able to get it through space, and create an opportunity. So it wasn't just straight pace. He had some of the other things that were that you want a winger to have, I guess. And Cedric was definitely concerned with what he was up against. And although this was pointed out in one of the group chats, Valerie's not overly pacey, but you just wonder, how that would have gone had that matchup been there. And so maybe this was the right choice in terms of that. But I think also right at the end of the first half, Cedric gives away a free kick for no apparent reason, and then doesn't mark the man at the back post, and Newcastle actually created a chance from it. But luckily, it was nothing going. But we went in at halftime, scores level, but us having 60% possession, created just slightly more shots, so not as much, maybe not as ruthless as we could have been in terms of the chances that we maybe had, or maybe us having more of the possession takes away a little bit of our game plan of pressing them high and forcing them into a lot of mistakes where they can be punished. But in Newcastle, of course, we're always going to be dangerous kind of on the break. But I would say that up until Ings scored in the second half, there wasn't a whole lot to kind of write about or talk about. And then, Ings puts us ahead, which if you look at the goals scored for Saints over the past couple of weeks, past couple of months, it's no surprise that it's Ings doing that. I mean, what did you make of the goal that he managed to score today? And were you surprised at all, I guess, that it was him that did it and not anybody else?
I'm not surprised at all. The form that Danny Ings is in at the moment, I think it's just typical strike and all-round goal, really, for someone in his run of form. I think it was night and day, really. If you sort of look at Ings' goal and then look at Redmond's miss in the first half, that it just shows what confidence can do to players. He can't seem to, everything he touches turns to gold right now. So I was, as soon as it was him in that position, I kind of was expecting the ball to end up in the back of the net, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. I would say that other than that, Newcastle didn't defend balls into the box very confidently. I would say that a lot of times they were lacking just getting the ball away. They were allowing the ball to bounce too many times, and I would say they didn't defend that Ings chance very well. But it was good from Ings to kind of to pursue the chance, to hold off the defender and kind of make sure he got the finish over, and that was great. Because I guess I can say going into halftime, I was pretty confident. I was pretty happy with how the things were going. I thought this would be a very positive conversation. Even if the game ended at halftime, I think I'd be totally happy. I would say, we left some points on the table, but the performance was there. When Ings puts us ahead, I was not really worried. I thought we were doing enough to kind of get out of there with points, I guess. And then I would say that I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think in recent weeks, I've noticed that McCarthy does a couple of things. He'll come for a cross maybe, and he'll get there, he'll make the punch, he'll make the claim, he'll do that. And then he kind of makes up his mind that he's going to come for everything. And maybe he punches one away, and then all of a sudden he'll miss with one, or he'll just get a touch to one, or he'll spill a shot. And then it seems like it's almost like a snowball kind of, and it builds and builds and builds, and he gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse with each additional cross or shot or whatever. And then it winds up with us kind of conceding. And I don't know if that's fair for McCarthy. Maybe it's just because he's a goalkeeper, and when you make a mistake as a goalkeeper, everybody notices because the ball winds up in the back of the net. But I think he did come for a ball. He spilled it, and he recovered, thankfully. But I was a little bit worried about that as we seem to get further and further into the game. It seemed like Newcastle were getting better and better. But still, I wasn't that worried until it seemed like when they brought on Carroll, it seemed like everything kind of not fell apart, but it seems like Newcastle were definitely pushing forward and looking like they were the more likely to score at that point.
Yeah, I agree. To be honest, I think the centre forward, is it Joel Linton?
Yes.
Who was on before Carroll, did much for them at all, really. I think Bednarek and Stevens sort of kept him quiet all throughout, and Carroll changed the game in respect for him. He gave them that something, even like I think you said earlier about them struggling to defend crosses into the box, and he gave them that extra presence at the back for set pieces, especially heading those out, as well as giving them that focal point to, I think Ralph commented after the game, he mentioned Newcastle being a bit of a long ball team. And certainly when Andy Carroll came on, I think they played to his strengths in that respect.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about Carroll being there for defensively, it seemed like every time the commentator said, Southampton put in a cross or a corner or whatever it was it was Carroll getting to the ball and Carroll clearing it or Carroll getting his head to it. And he, for injury problems aside, did the job today for them. He was I think he was great when he came on. I don't know what his rating will be or anything like that, but it should be pretty high based on his contributions just to the overall performance for them. So I would say, that he definitely had a lot to do with them kind of getting back into it and stuff like that. With 10 minutes left, obviously it was still, I guess we should probably talk about their first goal. Obviously, Saints failed to score again from after Ings put us ahead. Newcastle do level it up. Can I guess walk us through Newcastle's first goal and kind of just give us your kind of rundown of how that happened and maybe what we could have done better, or maybe what your thoughts on it were.
To be honest, it was quite a good goal from them, especially the cross that came in from Andy Carroll. I don't think great crossing ability is something that you'd necessarily associate with Andy Carroll, but I think the ball comes over and goes right the way through to the other side of the box, and it's Carroll that actually is the one that goes out for them and retrieves it, and actually manages to sort of turn the player that goes out to him and whips in a really good ball. And Shelby, I think, who was the guy who had initially put the ball in, that had gone all the way through, but obviously bust a gut to get himself into the box and was there to head it home for them. So if you're from a Newcastle perspective, it was quite a well worked goal in that sense. But from our point of view, defenders not picking up the runners that are coming into the box, and Shelby's relatively got a free head on it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the job that Andy Carroll did for Newcastle, both defensively and then of course being the one to put in that cross. That was an absolute beautiful cross. And Shelby, having made that, put the ball in initially, kind of just makes his way into the box, and you see Redmond check his shoulder and then not attack it, not go with him, not attack the ball, not do enough. And it's kind of like everybody has their man on a set piece or whatever, but once the ball, it's when the ball is recycled and there's the second opportunity, that's when people tend to either switch off or, they lose track of the man they're marking, or the man they're marking goes somewhere else and they don't pick up maybe somebody else who's free or whatever it is. And like you said, Shelby got his head to it relatively cleanly, without a lot of resistance, I guess, and that is super disappointing from us, because it's one of those things where we've definitely been the better team. We've had the better chances. We've created more of the chances, and yet we still managed to at that point be level. And that, I think, is when the doubt starts to creep in, and you're now looking at, how are we going to kind of get back into this and wind up with getting 3 points? Or do you just, at that point, what was your kind of thought? Do you think Ralph just needs to shut this up and just, kind of go a little bit more defensive and hang back and just defend? Or were you hoping that we would go forward and try to get another goal and maybe win the match instead of just try not to lose it?
Like I say, I was quite positive. I actually thought that, maybe bringing Buffal on or someone to inject something going forward would probably been more my approach at that point. Going into the game, I think a lot of us would have been okay with a point. But I just think because of the way that the game had unfolded, and we had got that goal to get ourselves ahead, I think Newcastle would sort of shown themselves to be vulnerable when we had attacked them. So I think I maybe would have put someone a bit more positive to try and get ourselves back into the game. Before they scored their equalising goal between Ings and then getting that goal, we had, another 2 or 3 chances really where we could have been out of sight. And Newcastle made us pay for missing those chances. So, I think the win was still there to go for at that point. So I probably I probably would have brought someone like Buffal on a bit sooner than he was, but I can see both sides of the coin. A point, going into it would have been a good result on paper. So, but my personal opinion would have been at that point to go for it a bit more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Buffal does come on eventually, 74th minute for Djenepo, and I think Djenepo would probably just run himself out. And Buffal came on right away and made, I think, an impact. He created a couple of opportunities and chances. I do want to just mention, though, that everybody seemed to be praising Son from Tottenham for his run in goal yesterday. And I was thinking, it's nowhere near as good as Sofiane Buffal's goal. That was, I think, through as many players, and I think what sets it apart is the fact that he made players run into each other and fall over, and I think that was great. And I think that's also a big team bias where everybody wants to praise Son, who I think is a great footballer, but we have to give Buffal some credit for that. I would say go to my Twitter account and look at the video, but that was taken down as well a long time ago. So Premier League doesn't like it when you post videos that aren't yours, apparently, on Twitter. But anyway, I don't know. I think we had a couple more chances even at 1-1. I thought. I think JWP hits the side netting from a dead ball. He tries to beat Dubravka and nearly does it, but I think he had the goalkeeper beat probably if he can get it in that top corner. Just doesn't quite do it. Redmond did well at one point to keep the ball. Cedric put a nice ball in. The header from Ings, I think, it had Long at the back post, and he was just not quite able to get it on target, which was a little frustrating. He just couldn't quite get to it. But that's there. And just before that, I think we had maybe our biggest chance. I think maybe just before Buffal came on, it was I think a corner, and then Shane Long has kind of headed the ball down to Bertrand, not dissimilar from last week or midweek, I should say. And this time Bertrand just can't quite react enough to keep it on the ground, and he manages to sky it over. And I think that one was maybe the one that came back to bite us the most, because that's a big presentable chance, a chance to kind of turn the table as the momentum is already swinging away from us, is a chance to kind of reclaim that and bring it back. And the failure there to get that goal, I think, comes back to will come back to haunt us. I think not just in the fact that we lost the game, but I think those are the points that you look at that said, like, we at least deserved a point today, and that was definitely the chance to make sure we had it.
Yeah, definitely. I think momentum's a massive thing in football, and any way that you can, get it to sort of be going your way is big in any football game. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. The momentum's going with you. Every player seems to up their game, and your shoulders seem to sort of go out a bit, and I think that's a big thing in any football match. So it would have been prime opportunity for us to have swung it back our way at that point.
Yeah. Longstaff would come on for Newcastle in the 85th minute. It puts in a shot from outside the area, but I think it takes a deflection off of Stevens, and McCarthy manages to just palm it away, but not nearly far enough out of the danger zone. Doesn't put it out for a corner or anything else. It just kind of is there, and there's nobody defending the back post. Bertrand is nowhere in sight. Whoever's playing out wide on that side is nowhere in sight, and Fernandez, a center back, waltzes in and puts it into the roof of the net, and Newcastle are up 2-1, and that was just devastating, because it was for most of the match, I would say we were the better team. Newcastle looked a lot better when Carroll came on, but I still thought we had the better of the match and the better of the chances, and it was just, they took advantage of that one mistake that we made, and they made us pay for it, and that's the way it goes, and that seems to be the way our season's going for the most part. But I mean, for you, does McCarthy deserve criticism there? Does he have to do better in that situation?
Yeah, I think so. I don't like to be too judgmental on our players. I don't think it helps, but yeah, I think when it's coming from as far out as it does, I think you need to either be holding on to it, and if he's making a decision in his mind that he's not going to be able to, then he needs to make sure that he's pushing it away from the danger area if he's going to be pushing it back out. Maybe seems like he got a bit sort of halfway house in terms of what he was going to do, whether he was going to try and hold it and then realised too late that he wasn't going to be able to. And it, unfortunately for us, goes back out into an area where, you know, you're just hoping and praying that it's a Saints shirt that gets there first, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, and their centre back Fernandez gets a bit of a tap in, to be honest. So, but yeah, I think McCarthy's got to take a bit of criticism for that goal, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying about, you know, overly criticizing players. It's not great, and I think the truth is, Lucy, I think, made the point on last week's Total Saints podcast when I was lucky enough to be on there that you know, our goalkeepers just aren't very good. Like if you just look at it, they're not performing well enough right now. These are the types of mistakes they're going to make, and it's unfortunate because when we make mistakes, especially, I think the closer you get to goal, the more likely a mistake is to lead to goal. Like the striker makes a mistake, loses the ball. Like that's what happens. We want them to create, and that they're going to do that. You lose in a midfield, it can open up a chance. If you lose in a defense, it's almost likely to give the other team a chance to score. And as a goalkeeper, if you make a mistake, it's likely the team's going to put the ball in the net as a result of it. And so it's important that you play kind of mistake-free in that role. But at the same time, like everybody makes mistakes, and it's just going to happen. And really, we should have probably been far enough ahead at that point to not give them that opportunity. You know, if we mark a man, if we mark John Joe Selvey and just put a body on him and or attack the ball when that cross comes in from Carroll, then we don't have to worry about that first goal. If Redmond puts the ball away early in the match, you know, maybe we're 2 or 3 goals up at that point, and Newcastle are slightly more deflated, the fans turn or whatever it is, and maybe that all changes things. But when you allow teams to hang around, then you allow teams the opportunity to take points from you, and that's what they did. So I think we have to give some credit to Newcastle for not playing a great game and still managed to get something from it, and we have to be critical of us to, as the role that we played in allowing them to hang around, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Shelby, when he's playing well, seems to be their sort of playmaker. Like you say, in hindsight, if we'd have had someone, you know, trying to keep him out of the game a bit more, then, you know, maybe they don't get into the positions to score the goals that they do. But it's unfortunately the way that our season's sort of gone so far is we don't take our chances, and we've always got a mistake or two in us, and I think that's just sort of followed that pattern a bit today, to be honest. And Newcastle were taking the chances that have come their way.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, I guess I'll ask you to judge the week from, I guess, the last 3 games. So Watford, Norwich, Newcastle. I guess if I tell you we take 6 points from those, you know, before the week ever starts, are you satisfied with that? Yeah.
I think you have to be, considering where we were prior to Watford. You know, we were sort of looking at possibly being cut adrift. And you know, we're still in the bottom 3 as it stands now, but only on goal difference. So we've certainly given ourselves a chance, and you know, we've dragged teams right back into it. So, you know, the next 2 games, West Ham at home and Aston Villa away, teams around us still again. So next 2 games are pretty vital, I think. If we can get, you know, 6 or 4 points out of those 2 games, then, you know, I think we'll be in a good place come the end of the following.
Yeah, well, I would say that, you know, we're as close to Arsenal in 11th as we are to Norwich in 19th. So the table is compressed, and it's kind of, you know, separated itself a little bit. You have the the top of the table seems to be kind of one section of it, and then you look at those teams in the middle there, from 5th down to 10th, everybody's super close. And then you look at the places from 11th down to where we are in 18th, and everybody is super compressed. So it's anybody can get drug into this. It's just going to take us, winning some matches. And unfortunately, Leicester City hurt us quite a bit with that. The 9-0 is going to hurt us in terms of goal difference and things like that. So we're going to have a long way to go to make up those points. But it's going to be, like you said, we're in it at least. We're not cut adrift yet, and it's going to be up to us to kind of do that. But we're going over. So let's jump into some questions. Unless you have anything else you'd like to say based on the match to wrap up Newcastle or Norwich.
No, let's crack on with the questions.
All right. So people can send in questions on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They can email them to southamptondelivery.com or at gmail.com or however they want. Patrons of the show who join at patreon.com/SFC delivery get priority for having their questions answered. The first question comes from Steve, who's at STE_unit on Twitter. And he says, here's one for you. Will we ever keep a clean sheet in a win again? What do you think?
Yes, I think we will. I think before the end of the season we will keep a clean sheet. As much as, defensively we are pretty bad, I think we're slowly getting better. I think going to the 4 at the back has improved us. And I just think there's enough about us, and there are some teams out there that I would say that we're capable of keeping it up for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm less confident than that. My normal prediction for anytime anybody asks me, I say 2-1 Saints. It seems, unless we're playing Liverpool or City, because I don't like to predict us to lose. I don't like that attitude, but I also don't feel like we're going to keep a clean sheet very often. Whether it comes from just a wonder strike from the other team or a defensive mistake from us, I question that. Although I do think we look much better, just kind of keeping the ball away from our goal, us putting it forward and even if we allow the other team to play with it in either their third of the pitch or in the middle third of the pitch, where we can press and kind of cause some havoc and and do that kind of stuff. I think we look much better than when we try to sit super deep and with a 5th center back or a 5th defender. And I just think that we look better kind of when the ball's further away from our goal, I guess. So I say we look better over the past couple of matches, but I still am not super, super confident us keeping a clean sheet there. Let's see. Another question from a patron. Kevin McGee says, do you think there will be any ins or outs in January? And we had spoken before. There have been rumors, of course, as we get closer and closer to the January window about what Saints will do and who are going to be linked with and who's going to go where. And really the question, I think, is always, who's going to be sold, if anybody, and will that free up money for us to actually bring players in? And if it does, will we actually spend the money on them? But in terms of that, I mean, as one of the people who runs a page about the team, I think transfer rumors are something you're almost required to stay up on, even if you don't like it, like I don't or do, or whatever the proper thing is there. What are your thoughts on what's going to happen in January in terms of where we are now?
What will happen in January? I think it will either be a fair amount will happen in January, or it will be really quiet. It will be one or the other. I don't think there'll be any happy mediums. Seen reports about Cedric, AC Milan linked to a move with Cedric recently, which I'm not sure what their scout is reporting back to the hierarchy, but happy for them to make a suitable bid. I mean, he's only got 6 months left on his current deal anyway, so I wouldn't imagine that they would need to bid huge amount for us to be willing to listen to that. And obviously, if he were to go, then we would need a right back to be brought in, because that would only really leave us with Valerie. So if we're prepared to sell Cedric, then I would expect us to dip in and get a right back in. Also, I think today I saw your guys at the Southampton page actually tweeted out that the Daily Mirror here had reported that Saints are willing to listen to loan offers for Vestergaard in January. So obviously we probably do have quite a surplus of centre backs. So, and he, apart from today's squad, he's not been in the squad at all for the last 2 or 3 games. So I suppose that would make sense.
Yeah.
So if he goes, then obviously that opens up some more possibilities. I'm not sure what's going on with Højbjerg's contract situation either. Whether we're in a position, if he's not going to sign a new one, whether we're going to be in a position to turn down a good bid for him, which, I would advise us not to, because regardless of what we sell him for, I think we're at huge risk of falling out of the league if we lose a player of his stature from the team at this point in the season. But there's a lot of factors there I think we could consider that could spring some movement for us in January. We could always do with a top centre half, but they're going to be difficult to get. I think every team's after a good centre half, especially with a lot of our defensive issues.
Yeah, I think if you look at even some of the top teams in the league, the center back pairings they run out there are not the strongest. That's definitely not the strongest part of their team. But as you also said, I think the Højbjerg's contract comes to an end, not at the end of this season, but at the end of next season. But we all know that last year is basically, if you haven't signed a new contract by then, it's likely that things are not going well and you need to be looking to sell that player. But yeah, I think losing Højbjerg would be atrocious. I think that would destroy us, just because you're losing the captain. And if you look at a team that really lacks leadership like we do, losing that figure would be terrible. And in terms of Vestergaard, yeah, we have one too many mediocre center halves at this point, and we need to do something to free up some wages there. But I don't know who you get to take him at this point. Maybe somewhere back in Germany, and you just say, look, like, there was a nice try, we missed, move on. He cut his hair as well, which now I have zero time for. As a person who cannot grow that type of hair, to just, to discard it like that so flippantly is unacceptable. We have another question here, and it maybe relates to the Cedric thing a little bit. It's from Millard505. He says, why is Cedric playing over Valerie? Another questionable performance today, since he's already said he won't stay past the season. Why aren't we giving the young proven player a run in the first team? And I would say that for me, it's really that is a question that I have. I look at Cedric being picked each and every week, it seems like, and I'm not a fan of what he's doing. His crossing, I think his first season he was with us, he was the most accurate crosser of the ball over the course of the season. Since then, I think it has gotten worse and worse and worse. And I can't really say that I'm happy to watch him play. I'm happy to have him picked. It seems like his mistakes are maybe I'm noticing them more because I'm kind of upset with him, or I think it should be out of the team. And so maybe I'm being slightly more critical, but it seems like more and more his mistakes are they are standing out more and more, and his performances are consistently mediocre. And that's not, I would rather see us kind of go with a couple of teams who are a couple of players who are younger and will need time to kind of build into things, but the experience will do them good. And I think that for me, that might be where I would like to see us do it, even though I would also say that Valerie looked uncomfortable in a back four almost every time out last season, and he looked much better as a wing back. And maybe with the switch to a back four, it means Cedric plays all the time. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And I guess, do you think we should move to Valerie over Cedric? And maybe why don't you think Ralph is making that switch? Good luck.
I really don't know, to be honest. I obviously don't get to see them every day in training. On whether Cedric's having a blinder of a training session in a week and then just having a rest on game days, I really don't know. But I would certainly have brought Valerie in by now if it were me. I think he did come on briefly against Watford, and I thought looked better than Cedric did on Ferroni's brief time on the pitch. So I'm not sure why he's not being played, especially with Cedric openly saying he's leaving at the end of the season. I would think that would be a really easy excuse for a manager to say, well, you're not going to be here past the end of the season. I need to look to the future for the club. I'm gonna keep giving Valerie some game time to develop him, and even if he is struggling a bit in a back four, then he's got half a season to sort of get used to it, I guess, or at least a month until we possibly get another right back in January. I generally don't know why Cedric is still getting picked over Valerie, to be honest. It's a question that I also have, like a lot of us do, I think, at this point.
And to end the day, we'll go with a question from Southampton News Now. It says, would you rather prime Danny Ings or prime Graziano Pella? And I don't know if this comes from, there was a highlight that went up the other day of Graziano Pella's goals for Saints. And I mean, I love that guy. I was so disappointed when he went to China, but at the same time, it was a brilliant move for him, because I think at the time it made him like the 5th highest paid footballer in the world, which is a great thing for him. But he is beautiful, and some of the goals he scored are beautiful. And so if I was going just based on looks, maybe I have to go with Graziano. But I think right now we have the guy we have, and we have a guy who wants to be here. So for me, I think I have to go with Danny Ings, just because he wants to be here. He chose to be here. He's playing for us. He's scoring goals now. And this is a much different team than we had when Pella was playing, right? Like, I think Tadic was instrumental in Pella getting some of the service he did and creating some of those chances. And although I would love to have those two back, I think Danny Ings has to be my choice right now.
Yeah, I love Pella as well, to be honest with you. I thought he was great. Loved his passion. Loved just the way that he played and carried himself. If there was an option to sort of get rid of all the other strikers and just have a prime Ings and Pella, then I would definitely go with that option. But I think just mainly sort of going sort of similarly what you went on there. Pella had a lot better team that he was playing in. And Danny Ings is also a local Southampton boy, so I think on that basis, just because what Ings is doing in the current team, and obviously the fact that he's one of our own, I'll have to go with Ings as well.
All right. Well, Arron, wasn't planning on keeping you this late. I'm sorry. Figured we'd be done in an hour, and it's been well more than that since we've been on here, and longer than that since we've been recording. So I apologize for that. But thanks for coming on, man. And unfortunate that we didn't get the win today to kind of liven our spirits a little bit. But I think overall it was a pretty good week for the team. And if people want to continue to get your thoughts and the thoughts of others, they can do that at saintsworld.co.uk. Also, like you said earlier, the Total Saints podcast, you guys are partnered with them. So that show will be up, I think. Generally, their episodes are released about this time, so it should be up by now. Definitely by the time you hear this, but right now, as we're recording, I think it just went up. People can follow you on Twitter at Arron Sanders. It's Arron Sanders on Twitter. And then, of course, it's at Saints World FC on Twitter as well for saintsworld.co.uk. But Arron, this has been a pleasure. Thanks for doing it. I appreciate you making time. And Sunday matches are always difficult to find the time to record after, so I appreciate you doing that. And it's been a pleasure.
No worries, man. Cheers for having me on.
That does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Arron Sanders. You can find him on Twitter at ARRON SANDERS. That's at Arron Sanders with 2 R's. He's the media editor at saintsworld.co.uk. You can get in touch with them on Twitter at Saints World FC. The links to all of those, of course, are in the show notes. So, Arron, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for being willing to break down not one but 2 games and delve into some questions and all of that. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope that you enjoyed the experience as much as I enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. While you are perusing the social media side of things, you can follow this show at SFCDELL_IVERY, both Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. And if you want links to our social media channels, a way to suggest new guests or look up old ones, a way to listen to past episodes, you can do all of that at southamptondelivery.com, where you can also sign up for the weekly newsletter. And I will ask, at this time of year, if you are enjoying the show and you want to give me a gift of some sort, the best thing you can do is just leave a review wherever you listen to the show, whether it be iTunes or wherever else. It helps other people find out about the show. We really would appreciate that. But this show would not be possible without you listening, first of all, so thank you so much. Wouldn't be possible without the guests, so thank you to Arron and everybody else who has been a guest on the show over the years. Also, without our partners, this would be very, very hard to do. So be sure to follow the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow them for all your Southampton FC news and needs. The podcast comes out once a week. The newsletter comes out once a week. But they are on there each and every day, keeping you up to date with everything that's going on around the club. The logo for the show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. And all music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. We'll be back with another episode next week after West Ham, so hopefully we have 3 more points to talk about and we can continue moving up the table. But no matter what, thanks for listening. I appreciate your time. And until next time, remember that together, we march on. Sorry, my family's walking in. Hi, guys. It's okay. Love you. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got distracted.